Hi everyone. I decided to do a video recording because, well, we have to write a lot anyway, so I figured I might as well try out the video. So, good morning, and I hope you guys enjoy learning a little bit more about my research and my first kind of data analysis. So, just as a reminder, my research topic is young adult language and identity formation in southern Texas along the Rio Grande Valley and the border between US and Mexico in particular. So my primary research question is something along the lines of how does living in the border region impact one's identity and language choices? I'm not exactly sure what kind of approach I'm officially doing, I guess, and I think that's kind of the magic of qualitative research. Um, I want to approach it as kind of like a narrative study, but also I want autoethnographic and ethnographic elements in it as well. So these are things I'm kind of exploring as I go through my data analysis. So for the description of my analysis, I started out with just first cycle coding, and the first kind of codes that I did were descriptive coding. I decided to use descriptive coding because I felt like I could kind of put a few different keywords from my research questions and things that I was finding and kind of pull them out into summarizing my data into kind of themes. So some of my codes were like language choice, and then from that I looked for valued language, so where my participants talked about when they valued English or Spanish more, learning English, speaking English, and speaking Spanish. Then I looked at identity. So I coded for identity, I coded for identity label markers. I looked for when my participants talked about being Mexican or being white, and when they decided to put a label onto their identity. And then I looked at changing identity, so I coded for anywhere they talked about how their identity changed or kind of evolved or was different in a certain way from living here instead of living somewhere else. And then I also coded for when they talked about when their language might have mixed with their identity. And I also coded for just the border in general when they talked about the border and things in the border. And then I coded for things on kind of one side in what they call the valley, so the US side of the border. I should also note that I have 2 participants right now for my interviews. I'm hoping to interview a lot more in the future, but I have 2 kind of hour-long interviews with one girl who is from Mexico, and she's living in this area, and she's going to school here. She's in her early 20s, and she's of Mexican descent, and she struggled to learn English in this area. And then my other participant is the complete opposite, and she's from West Virginia, and she's white, and she moved down here to go to school, and she was trying to learn Spanish. So they're kind of 2 polar differences, I guess, in the same area. After descriptive coding, I did a little bit of values coding. And I tried values coding out because I was reading in our text that it has a lot of advantages for identity research. And so I coded for values, attitudes, and beliefs. For values, I looked at when my participants talked about being independent, standing up for others, showing perseverance, and showing openness towards others. For attitudes, I looked at feelings, and I found a lot of feelings throughout my 2 interview transcripts, liking things, negative feelings, embracing the accent that you have, feeling like there's a certain place to speak a language over another, feeling self-conscious, feeling different or like the other, and not fitting in. Beliefs I kind of struggled with for coding for, and I think when I go back and do a second cycle of coding I might find more. But I found some beliefs kind of more or less having to do with pride. And then I also did a tiny bit of in vivo coding, and I just coded a couple words, different slang words, and one in particular is called the pulga, and it just means a flea market. So overall, the results of my analysis really helped me to start to clarify the themes and some of the points and ways my participants were similar to each other in ways that I didn't really notice or think about before. Also ways that they were different as well. And overall, I found that identity and language are very much intertwined in this area, and that both of my participants mentioned different stories about feeling isolated with not knowing one language over the other, and also how their accents influenced their identities. One really embraced her accent, and the other thought her accent really distanced her from other people and didn't like having that accent. So my results kind of showed a lot of themes, like I said, the theme of being the other, of feeling unsure of oneself or self-conscious, struggling with a language, not fitting in, choosing one language over another for certain reasons, feeling at home within the confines of the university instead of the area itself, and finding a change in perspective. Both of my participants viewed this area in a certain way before they came here, and then they found that it was very different than what they had imagined. And I myself felt those feelings when I was there as well. And I'm looking at my research from a very critical and constructive perspective, so I think that my viewpoint is very much valued within my research as well. So that's an area that I want to explore more in the future. They also both dealt with navigating the assumptions of other people as to why they were there, and kind of dealing with labels that were put on them. So yeah, I found a lot of really, really interesting things. Two things I think that I found that were most interesting was that my participant that is from Mexico kind of viewed the valley, this area, as more of like a fantasy place where it was better than Mexico, and it was kind of like the movies in a way. And then she found that that wasn't necessarily true, and that the United States has lots of problems and issues too. Whereas my other participant also kind of had this utopian view of this area, and she kind of just imagined that it would be very accepting to people from all different cultures because it's a predominantly Hispanic and Mexican area. It's about 95-97% people of Mexican descent or from Central America, South America. And so her kind of words that was, because this was the area that's predominantly brown, she thought that people would be just very accepting to others, whereas she found the opposite, that she was really looked at differently for being an outsider, and that acceptance that she assumed would be there just wasn't really there. So I found a lot of things in my results, and a lot of things sparked more things that I want to pursue for follow-up interviews as well. Finally, a very quick reflection on my analysis strategy. So coding, I really think, is a lot harder than it looks, and I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. However, I used the MaxQDA software, and that was absolutely amazing. Also, I used a transcription kind of software. I used ExpressScribe for both of my transcriptions, and if you don't use a software now and you're doing it completely by hand, I would definitely say use something like ExpressScribe, because it was a lifesaver. Anyway, some benefits of first cycle coding. Descriptive coding really helped me to organize my ideas and thoughts better, and it forced me to put a label on things, and I don't really like putting labels on things. Because I don't know, I don't like it when people put labels on me, and so I don't like to put labels on other things, but I know that it's important to do, and it really helped me to have to organize things by labels, which I think is beneficial for my research and kind of clarifying thoughts. Values coding I really liked because it helped me to kind of find the attitudes and stayed focusing on looking at identity and how it relates to language. And I liked using in vivo coding a little bit to keep the voices of my participants in my data. Some drawbacks, I think, of of coding and first cycle coding, or I feel like I might have gone a little overboard with my coding. I coded a lot of things, and looking back, I think I might have coded too much, and so I'm excited to go back for kind of a second look at it, second cycle coding, I guess. I think a lot of my codes can be merged from their own thing into like a subcoding, and definitely want to go back and do that. Some benefits of MaxQDA. I loved using the software, and I just got the trial version of it, but I think I will definitely pay for a year or at least 6 months subscription to it. The interface just makes coding a lot funner and less of a chore. And I really like colors, and I'm a really visual person, so being able to add different colors to my codes made that a lot better too, and it just helped me to kind of digest and think about them better. Yeah, it was just amazing to be able to search for a word and all these things come up, and I'm still learning about it, so I definitely don't know everything about it by any means, but it definitely was useful and beneficial. The one drawback I think that MaxQDA has, though, is that it doesn't have a spell check, and I'm a terrible speller, so even like within my comments, I know I'm spelling things wrong when I'm like exporting them into notes and stuff, so I wish it had spell check, but that's really my only complaint about it. So now I'm just kind of left thinking and reflecting on what's next for me. I want to think about more of how I fit into my research, and I want to force myself to include this in my writing. I do think my role as a researcher is very important, and I know I have biases, but I want to use these biases within my my research and my write-up of my research, acknowledging them as what they are and looking at them subjectively within my research. So yeah, I'm very happy to continue. Thank you.